Can you start a podcast with me, please? I need something to do.
Pastrnak sent it out in front of Malkin to save. They score! Elias Lindholm looks to the heavens.
Here's a chance. Potter right in and goalie scores. Oh my, what a move by the rookie.
2-on-1. Pastrnak moving in with Marchand. Get into it. Score!
The zone. Coyle dances in. Backhand score!
Lindholm right wing corner. Pastrnak is there. He scores! David Pastrnak wins it for Boston.
Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of Bruins Tape to Tape. I will be your host today, Maria from Watertown. We are recording today's episode on Monday, March 23rd, after another busy slate of games for the Boston Bruins that we'll take a little bit of a dive into. But before we get down to the business of talking hockey, I'd like to welcome in my lovely co-host, Caroline with a K. Welcome in and congratulations on your hockey season being completed for a much needed time to catch your breath.
Yes, finally, the youth hockey season is done and over with, and I have free time. My time is my own for the most part for at least a couple more months.
And until the next slate of activities that your daughter brings home to you.
Oh, yes, exactly.
But anyways, the Bruins, again, they've had a busy week, which we touched upon in our last episode. This is definitely a sprint to the finish. We are going to talk about the Bruins grinding things out for themselves and hopefully taking charge of their own destiny for a change. We'll talk about Lucas Reichel's debut, and also we are officially now on James Hagen's watch.
I know.
Because the Boston College Eagles were defeated in the Hockey East tournament over the weekend. So it should be interesting to see what transpires with that player in the coming days.
Yes. Yep. We've heard that he's giving it some thought. I think we all kind of know what the ultimate conclusion is going to be. It's whether or not he wants to start right now or next week or whatever. I can't imagine someone of his caliber is going to sit on the bench for terribly long on that shelf. So,
well, I would like to think, I mean, it is a really big jump.
It is.
So I'm wondering that, even if he does make the decision to say, you know what, I do want to play up with the big boys, whether there'll be time in Providence before he makes any kind of appearance with the Boston Bruins.
Yeah. Well, and you have to also consider the needs of the Boston Bruins at this point in time. We're going to be talking about the playoff race and what they need to be doing, how they need to be focused going into those final few games. And while we are all very, very excited to see Hagen's play in Boston, is his arrival something that we can squeeze in? I mean, certainly we've seen in the past, once the playoff picture becomes a little bit clearer, they'll start to give, especially some of the older guys, some load management, and they'll bring up the young folks. But it's kind of hard to say if that's going to happen this time around, because I think that the Bruins are really going to be fighting for that spot right down the stretch. So is there a time? Is it appropriate to throw him in for a game or two? Maybe, because look at Reichel. But on the other hand,
didn't they do that with Torrey Krug?
Yeah. And I think, the similar thing happened with Charlie McAvoy. He came in. Jeremy Swayman came in at the very end. But I think playoff pictures were a little bit more clear. The other thing is, Hagen's really, I'm sure, is considering the fact that he's in peak physical conditioning to play at a high level. Now, whether it's he goes to Providence or gets a call up for a handful of games in Boston, one would also have to imagine that the transition would be moderately easier going immediately in as opposed to an entire summer where you're just doing your usual conditioning thing and you don't know necessarily if that's what you should be doing because you've never experienced what they need from you. So I'm sure there's a lot to be considered. I mean, he's also still very young, and this is a very important point in his career and his life.
And his development, right? I just want to caution the people that, are just chomping at the bit to have this player join the team. Yes, we're all excited about seeing how he'll be able to contribute. But if he comes in the lineup, that means somebody else is coming out of the lineup. And when the Bruins are in the thick of what they're doing right now, and every point matters, I'm not sure. I don't want to call it a distraction, but that is another added layer that has to be looked at by management and more so the coaching staff. It'll be interesting to see what develops over the course of days and maybe even, a week or so to see where that young man lands. The other bit of Bruins news is that we had the debut of Lucas Reichel.
Yeah.
And I think it was a very successful debut. And honestly, my viewpoint on that was when you insert sometimes a new member of your team or, bring someone up and they're trying to make the most of their opportunity and they come in with an energy level that you think is sometimes been a little bit lacking, it becomes contagious. And I thought his energy level on Thursday in his debut against the Winnipeg Jets, I think it filtered down to everybody else because I thought that game was really fast-paced and flying.
Yes, that was definitely a shot in the arm. We see when there are various kinds of changes that happen, whether it's GM changes or coaching changes or player changes, all of those things can result in these little bumps, a little boost. Sometimes change is good. And in this case, you've got a kid who he was an immediate impact. I mean, he scored on his first day on the job.
Right.
I've enjoyed watching him that first game. That night, I had actually started listening to the game because I was in the car. And my very first question to the Discord group when I got home was, what's up with him? Because I keep hearing his name. And then shortly after I asked how he was doing, he scored his first goal. He's very noticeable, and I hope it keeps going that way.
I hope so for his sake. I think it's incumbent upon these players that are given the opportunity to make the most of the opportunity you are given. Make it hard for the coaching staff to have to take you out of the lineup.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Let's right now, before we dive into the week that was for the Bruins, let's take our usual spin around the rink. And we're going to start with some really sad and tragic news in that Jesse Pierce, who is a writer for NHL.com and was also very heavily involved in the Minnesota Wild hockey community. She and her 3 children tragically passed away in a house fire on Saturday. And, there are absolutely no words that anybody can say that can speak to the devastation of something like that occurring. I can't even fathom it. I can't even imagine it. You feel heartbroken for family and friends who are left behind in a situation such as this. So, our condolences to Jesse's family and friends.
Yeah, horrible news.
Anyways, so yeah, we move on. We have 2 teams that have officially clinched playoff spots. No big surprise, the Colorado Avalanche. They've pretty much been a bit of a wagon for most of the season. They've had some ups and downs to kind of bring them back to earth on occasion. The other team that has also clinched a spot despite a loss on the night that they did clinch was the Dallas Stars.
Well, and I do have to say, all right, yes, well done, Colorado, well done, Dallas. However, it's a heck of a lot easier to do that in the West.
Yeah. Well, the Pacific, and we talked a little bit about this off air before we started recording, and we'll touch upon it now. But that Pacific Division is a bit of a joke. There are teams in the Eastern Conference who are boasting better records than some of the teams in the Pacific who are not going to make the playoffs. They're chasing like wild card spots. Yet some teams in the Pacific Division are likely going to make the playoffs with less than 90 points under their belts. I mean, they're likely not going to get to the 100-point mark.
No, at this point, the last I heard, to make the playoffs in the East, teams are going to have to get 100 points. And it's something like 80 is the threshold to make it in the West. And part of that is the significant drop off in points in the Pacific. So to put some context, again, it's March 23rd when we're recording this. So might change a tiny bit by the time you hear this. In the Pacific, you have Anaheim. They have 82 points.
82 points.
82 points, which is less than every team already in the playoff structure in the East. That's your division leader.
Right.
Okay.
Vegas with 78, Edmonton with 77, the Kings with 73. And so, I mean, Vancouver only has 50 points this season. 50 points. And I know we've talked a little bit back and forth about this in the East where, is it parity? Is it mediocrity? But I guess I have to lean more towards, because I've said, a little bit of mediocrity, but now looking at this, I have to say there's more parity in the East.
Yeah, I think we're just spoiled, Maria, in that the competition is that much tighter and that much better in the East. There's always been a tighter competition in the East. It's been like that for a very, very long time. But this seems to me like a very stark contrast in comparison.
That is what is gross about the playoff formatting right now. And there's been a lot of conversation about that recently, both during national broadcast games by their analysts on TNT and ESPN. And, you listen to guys like, Chris Chelios and Mark Messier. And, I don't think that Darren Pang was very vocal about it. They are not enamored with this formatting whatsoever, because you are going to have some really good elite teams who are going to wind up getting knocked out of the playoffs. And I think that's a disservice to the players and the franchises who have worked hard under a strict cap, because the cap is real in the NHL. And it just doesn't seem to be a good system of rewards here.
Yeah.
And I think it does a disservice to the fans. This is the Stanley Cup playoffs are the best professional sports playoffs by far of any of the four major sports.
Mm-hmm.
And then to potentially have it watered down because you're all too stubborn to make changes, it's nonsense, and I think it's bullshit. But
it is.
No one listens to us.
Right. Well, and Gary Bettman recently just came out too, saying he's like, it's not changing, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well, this is why we boo you.
No, because they want some of these small market teams, right, to get playoff gates.
Right. Well, whatever it takes to get Edmonton there, right? What is this?
I just wonder if this will be a topic of conversation, potentially at owners' meetings or the next GM meetings, because there's been a lot of chatter about it, especially this season, because of what you're seeing now. Can they justify it by saying, oh, well, it's just because Colorado and Dallas and Minnesota have just been beating the piss out of all these teams in those divisions within their conference? I don't know. Maybe there's some of that.
They're that good because you're going to be playing teams in your division the most, right? You're going to have your 4 games there. Then you're going to have 3 games with the teams in the other division in your conference. Well, if the other division in your conference is terrible, you're going to rack up points. You are going to rack up those points. And I'm not saying that those three teams that you mentioned are not legitimately good and not a legitimate threat. Like, they absolutely are. But the hurdle is not nearly as high as it is for teams in the East.
Right.
I feel like that's just how it's going to be for a little while. So kind of a preview to the penalty box, the East versus the West situation, because again, as a Bruins fan, I'm irritated. As a hockey fan in the East, like, I love this. This is fun. This is what it's all about. But it's not fair, Maria. It's not fair.
I know, but we all know life isn't fair. So it's just, to me, like, the resistance of even considering making a change. I think there is is what pisses me off.
Right? Oh, yeah.
And this is where I think there's a big difference between the NHL and the NFL. Say what you will about Roger Goodell and sometimes those owners. They do listen and they do make changes for the benefit of their league, of their players, and of their fans. Anywho, we digress. Next bit of news around the rink. AJ Greer was apparently suspended for 3 games for his actions during a game. He boarded a Flame Center Zari, and
that was an in-person too.
Yeah.
That was a pretty
well, there's a suspension coming when they say in person.
Yes.
And then the final bit of news from around the rink is Alex Ovechkin.
Yes.
1,000 goals. 1,000 goals. This guy is just an enigma. He's just unbelievable.
He's certainly earned that, and it's kind of funny. He's a player who has evolved, certainly, over his career, to the point where at this juncture, his one job is to stand in his spot and shoot the puck and still can get it in. He doesn't have to skate around the rink like a crazy person anymore at 41 years of age. He can just stand there and he gets it in. So that's all that matters, and he keeps racking it up, and somehow nobody can stop him.
No, it's just an amazing feat. And I just wonder if it's going to be a feat that, I don't know, I'll see it in my lifetime again, but It's crazy. Yeah, absolutely crazy. So congrats to the Great 8.
Yes.
Great 8. All right, now down to the business of the Boston Bruins. Since our last episode, the Bruins have played 4 games. They had 2, I guess I want to say, kind of frustrating. I don't want to say heartbreaking, but frustrating overtime losses. One to the New Jersey Devils by a score of 4-3, and the other to the Montreal Canadiens by a score, I know, 3. That one pisses me off more than the Devils one did. But it's mostly just because it's the Habs, right?
Yeah.
It's just because it's always about beating the Habs. But they did secure 2 points, but their level of play was okay. You see instances of good play and then instances of, what are you guys doing? Like, how are you letting these guys basically have the run of the front of your net, where you're, solely relying on your goaltender? And Jeremy Swayman has been so good. Even Marco Sturm gave him credit for that huge win against the Red Wings on Saturday night. If it wasn't for Swayman, not only did he keep them in the game, but he pretty much won that game for him.
Yeah. It was an interesting week because the Devils game, that game was insane. The Bruins came out, they were doing fine, and the Devils came back and they made their push and they couldn't do it, and so they decided to not play hockey anymore, and it turned into a circus. On one hand, highly entertaining because you just kept thinking, like, what are we doing here?
Right.
It was a little bit frustrating that the Bruins lost that, like, in the very final couple of seconds of
waning
overtime.
Seconds of, oh my God, I hate those type of goals. I really, really do. And I hate the fact that you had a 2-0 lead.
Yeah.
And you came out in the second period and you weren't ready for the push from the Devils.
Right.
You simply weren't ready.
But then the Devils had this complete collapse of discipline And the Bruins did a pretty good job of staying the course. It was just irritating because we've seen how many times they've had those games and then they became the undisciplined ones and they blew the game because of their lack of discipline. And yet here's a game where the opponent did what they have done in the past and the Bruins didn't get rewarded. So that was a little bit frustrating. And then of course in Montreal, I mean,
and just at least, Pasta memo was sent and received by Pasta about the need for him to shoot more and try to score goals. And so he did have a goal, and Pavel Zacha's continuing his tear as well, thankfully,
Yes.
right?
Another Hattie watch. I'm curious about Pasta. So they interviewed him during, I think, the Detroit game, and he kind of referenced something to the fact that he's like, oh, yeah, I changed sticks, whatever. Okay, maybe that's a thing. However, I wonder if he was maybe trying to take on too much responsibility in trying to feed and support other players to get them to, score goals. And because we've certainly seen that, like his points this season are primarily in assists. He got his 500th career assist the other night. Something happened in the last week or so where, I don't know, like you said, memo received. The decision was, it's been nice that you're trying to help others and trying to get depth scoring with your playmaking. However,
you are our elite scorer. That's your job. Yeah.
We just need the goals, right?
Yes.
So sometimes you're trying to, it's like you've got, kids and you're trying to teach them how to do things like we're going to fold the laundry together or we're going to cook a meal together so you can learn how to do that. But sometimes you only have 5 minutes and you're like, you're not, I'm doing it. I'm going to do it because I can do it faster and so we can get the thing done. And so I kind of wonder if there's a little bit of that going on.
Right.
Because he certainly has taken charge.
Well, and he needs to because he is our elite scorer. And I can appreciate
we have him for a reason.
What he's been doing, but now it's crunch time, David.
Yes. I was worried going into that Detroit game because of how similar the two teams were going into it with their stat lines, with the stat lines of the individual players. I was concerned that once again, as we have seen this Bruins team do time and time again, that they were going to make Gibson, the Detroit goalie, look like a Vezina candidate.
Right.
And I think Pasta's actions on the ice really obviously helped prevent that from happening. So that was a big relief that didn't happen. And there was some depth to that game in terms of scoring as well. So I'm happy. It was a messy start to the week, but they finished strong. And that's all that we can hope for at this point because of the remaining schedule.
And that Winnipeg game, we need to touch upon that because, that saw Connor Hellebuck in net. And boy, oh boy, he looked a little bit lost and out of sorts. The Bruins ended up winning that game 6-1 with a variety of different scores, but goals by, I think, 6 different players.
Yeah.
For the Bruins.
Yeah.
Which, when is the last time that flipping happened?
It's been a minute.
The ones that did not score, who have been a continuing source of concern in that game, were Morgan Geekie and Elias Lindholm.
Yes. Although, one of them did score a goal in Detroit.
He did. And let me tell you a funny story about that, because true to form for me, I call Morning Brew up, and this is what happens. When I call out a player, how many times has this happened?
Oh, my God.
Call him out during my phone call. What is wrong with him? Is there a lingering issue? Does he have a malaise? How long are we going to wait for this guy to get going? And lo and behold, he answers the call.
So now you just got to call in and complain about Morgan Geekie, and we should be good.
I guess he will be my next target for next
He's your
Saturday
next
if he doesn't get off the schneid here with these upcoming games. And I think those two guys not going, too, have had a detrimental impact on the power play as well.
Yes.
Like the Bruins' entries on the power plays are just beyond belief and not in a good way.
Well, and I feel like it's Bruins tradition over the last 5 years that it's this time of the season when the power play just ceases to exist. That's the 3 years in a row, Maria.
We have been giving, Steve Potts so much credit for the changes made to the power play.
But we've got 5 divisional games left. We also have games against Columbus. They have actually finally made the jump into the third spot for their division. However, it's all still super close. So that game's going to matter. We want to see them do well against Toronto just because it's Toronto anyways. But
right.
important. We've got Buffalo.
And that Buffalo game, pay attention to that because I think Buffalo's going to want to make a statement.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Because it's been, I can't remember, have the Bruins played Buffalo since they got good? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
So this is going to be the first time that they've played against each other since their meteoric rise.
The Bruins have probably one of the hardest remaining schedules of any team in the league. They need to have their head on a swivel and they need to be focused and they need to play complete 60-minute games here. You cannot take your foot off the gas against any of these opponents. Who is getting stick taps this week from us?
So obviously Pasta for his 500th assist. That's absolutely massive. It puts him at number 9. I mean, he's still been at number 9 in assists, but he's closing in pretty quickly on Wayne Cashman, who has 516. So I think that it's still very much so a possibility for him to put himself into 8th place overall in Bruins history. But then also just the fact that he's really stepped it up, and it's been, again, that bumpy ride since the Olympic break, and his leadership has been outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. And, speaking of leadership, the other team leader, Charlie McAvoy, I mean, he's been, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 games, he's been that powerhouse workhorse that we love to see, that we always want to see more of. He's been having those kind of games. So that's been fantastic to see. And we want to keep seeing more of that. So that's another stick tap for me, as well as, of course, the debut for Reichel and Jeremy Swayman.
Jeremy Swayman has been pretty damn good. And he needs to keep being pretty damn good if this team is going to have any chance.
Absolutely. He cannot take his foot off.
Nope. I agree. Penalty box. Who's in the box?
Well, power play continues to be just absolutely atrocious. Although on the flip side, I forgot one other stick tap then, the penalty kill. We can only have one, apparently, at any given time. We're going to have one. So power play, as much as I have always enjoyed Boston having a very strong PK, it was nice when they had a really good power play, and the fact that it stinks is terrible. Elias Lindholm,
we need more from him. That was nice, but he needs to build on that, right? And both in the power play and 5v5, it is imperative that he and Geekie get going again. Yeah, figure it out, guys. Figure it out sooner rather than later, please.
And then, of course, my complaints about playoffs.
We touched upon that. You know what?
It's not fair.
No, it's not right, but no one's going to listen to us. So that's going to wrap up this week's episode. As we touched upon, the Bruins have another busy slate of games, all with significance and implications to their playoff positioning. So we will follow up with another episode next week in the hope that we have nothing but good things to say after this series of games. But in the meantime, please make sure that you like and subscribe to find more content. And please be sure to leave a rating for us that helps other Bruins fans find us. You can also support our little podcast by joining our Patreon or by following us on our socials. You can find us at Tape to Tape MK and on Substack at tape2tapemk.substack.com. Any closing thoughts?
Go Bees!
Go Bees!